Hey guys, so this is going to be part 2 of how I figured out that I was trans. Um, First thing I want to say is that I had two older sisters. I had a mom, I had a dad, I had a grandma, and a grandpa. So I knew what boys and girls were. I knew what boys and girls were. I knew how they were supposed to be, and I knew how they were supposed to act. My older sisters were perfect examples of little girls. Um, so it wasn't like I didn't know the way little girls were supposed to act. I knew how little boys were supposed to act, and I always just gravitated towards the men in my family. Um, I can't really explain it, and that's just how I was. Um, I remember tormenting my sisters. I remember always wanting boys' toys. I remember the fights that would happen when it came to brushing my hair or putting me in girls' clothes. Um, they only successfully got me in a dress twice in my life, and both of those times was still pretty against my will. And I was just kind of backed into a corner and forced to do it, and had no way of getting out of it. Um, the couple of times that I went to a funeral, I only went to two funerals before the age of, actually, have I been to any other funerals? Um, oh, okay, yeah, I did. I was trying to remember if I had been to any of them, any more funerals since I was 10. Yes, I have. Um, anyway, the two funerals that I went to, by the age of 10, I remember the horrible fight over my outfits, um, and that and how very inappropriately dressed for a funeral I ended up being because of the compromises that had to be made. Because they always try to put me in a dress or a skirt or something like that for a funeral, and I remember compromising on jeans and a t-shirt, and how inappropriate I felt, and like I had two sets of horrible feelings going on because I remember the t-shirt that I'm talking about was my grandfather's funeral when I was 10. Um, they made me wear this black t-shirt that had 100% angel bedazzled into the chest, and I just was I wanted to rip it off. I wanted to rip all those little jewels off and just put me in a plain black t-shirt. So I felt horrible over what they were making me wear. I felt horribly inappropriate over what I was wearing to the funeral because I was in jeans and t-shirt and everybody else was in dress clothes. I even had bad feelings over the fact that it said 100% angel, but that's a whole nother story if anybody recognizes the dude behind me. Um, anyway. But there's all of these little incidents throughout my whole life where there were just such big red flags, where normal kids wouldn't have had these particular objections to these issues. Like, not too many little kids want to get dressed up, but their problem is being dressed up. Their problem isn't the fact that they're being dressed up like a girl or that they're being dressed up like a boy. I actually didn't have a problem with being dressed up. I had a problem being dressed up like a girl. I always wanted to dress up the way my dad did. I would constantly take his dress shirts and the one tie that he had, and I would try to teach myself how to tie the tie. Um, and I'd look at myself in the mirror, and I'd love how I'd look. I remember watching my dad shave and pretending to do that later on my own because I learned pretty early on that showing these more male things about myself were very odd and out of place. I I remember something as odd and personal, and you can maybe skip ahead 30-40 seconds if this is TMI. I remember when I was a really little kid, and I'm talking like elementary school age, that I even dabbled in trying to teach myself how to pee standing up. I don't think there's too many little girls who try to do that. At least not on a consistent basis like I did. I actually was building STP devices in elementary school. Just saying. Big old red flags. I remember locking myself in the bathroom and my parents banging on the door like, "What's taking you so long in there?" And it's because I was trying to build and test out an STP device. And just, yeah. Anyway. One of the earliest memories that I have, earliest waking memory that I have relating to me being trans was the first Christmas that I can remember. This is something that I shared in therapy. It's one of the earliest memories I have, and one of the only times that I actually was bold enough to say something about my gender out loud to my parents. But I was somewhere between the ages of 2 and 4, maybe even younger than that, and they got me a Barbie doll for Christmas. Now, my sisters played with Barbies. I always wanted boys' toys. I remember chasing my sisters around the house with this little Frankenstein doll I had that was this big. My dad still has it, actually. I want it back. He could open up his chest and push and play with his organs, and it'd make him talk and shit, and it just freaked the hell out of my sisters. And I'd chase them around the house with it, freaking them out like a little boy would. That was one of my favorite toys growing up. But I remember the earliest Christmas that I can remember, they got me a Barbie for some stupid-ass reason. And I remember looking at this Barbie, looking at my parents, looking at this Barbie, looking up back at them, and I said straight out, "Barbies are for girls." And that's when my parents looked at me, about as dumb as I was looking at them, because I'm like, oh, okay. And they look at me with the exact same confused expression back, and it's like, "You are a girl." And I still remember the first fucking thing I wanted to say was, "No, I'm not." But I knew at that age that back-talking got me in trouble. Because I also got in trouble quite a bit when I was little. So, I knew back-talking would get me in trouble, so instead of saying, "No, I'm not," I said, "Are you sure?" They were like, "Yeah, we're sure." I remember not believing them and being like, "Alright, I didn't believe them. I didn't. I did not believe them whatsoever. And that Barbie ended up melted in an easy bake oven later on. So, they never got me Barbies again. Pretty much almost every Christmas after that I can remember, they never really got me anything super girly. And anything that I got that was girly was kind of like a bulk gift that all three of us got. And yeah, that's one of those memories that I share in therapy, because it's one of the only times that I actually was like, yeah, I'm a boy, right? There was another time growing up where I was bold enough to say it, and I was much older. I was still in elementary school, but I was much older than, a toddler. and they were it was me and my sisters and my dad, and we were all sitting around the living room, and my dad was talking about my birth story, because I tried to come out 3 or 4 times and they kept shoving me back in. And I made this comment because I still ended up being born a week or 2 premature. I made this comment as a joke to my dad and, everybody in the room. You should have shoved me back in that last time, because maybe then I would have came out a boy. I wasn't done cooking yet. And my dad just got so mad at that statement. It was like, he, instantly, because we were all joking, everything was lighthearted, we were all having a good time. And then after I made that comment, my dad got so mad, so quick, and so serious. He was like, "What the fuck? Why are you thinking like that? You shouldn't be thinking like that. What the fuck?" That was his reaction. That was pretty much what he kept saying was, "What the fuck? You shouldn't be thinking like that." And I remember that feeling just being quite traumatic. Like, damn, you just jumped down my throat so damn harsh over this. That particular episode happening to me is probably why I ended up stuffing down a lot of those feelings until I was almost an adult and could make my own decisions. Because I did suppress those active feelings of wanting to be a boy, or feeling like I would have been better off a boy, or I should have been a boy. I actively suppressed those feelings almost until I was an adult. It wasn't until I was a later teenager, or kind of an early teenager and then later teenager, kind of popped up a couple of times. It wasn't until I was a later teenager that I actually started messing with my identity, or figuring out my identity. But as an early teenager, it wasn't until I was a very early teenager that those feelings ever cropped back up again, and it was because of an ex-girlfriend, or a girlfriend at the time, asking me, have I ever thought about being a boy? And, I mean, I know I was never a girly girl. I never have claimed to be a girly girl. I've always been an oddball. But it was just so surprising to me at that particular time. It's like, I felt that comment came from so far out of left field. Like, how did she know? Or what the hell what am I doing to make people think, or make people figure out that I wanted to be a boy? And I remember that being another one of those things that cropped up that later in life, because I can almost kind of pinpoint from that conversation with my dad and my sisters, and him jumping down my throat that one time, all the way up to me being 14, 15 years old, and my ex-girlfriend asking me if I wanted to be a boy. I suppressed my feelings of wanting to be a boy pretty much from that point to that point. And I was in elementary school during that conversation. So I don't know how many years that was. But I was under the age of 10. So that was from under the age of 10 to at least 14 or 15 that I actively suppressed those feelings. But all the while, I'm still having those reoccurring dreams of wanting to be a boy. But during that long chunk of time, I didn't tell anybody anything. I didn't tell anybody that I wanted to be a boy. As far as I knew, wasn't actively even showing to anybody that I wanted to be a boy. I just was always an oddball who wasn't very girly, and everybody just labeled me as a tomboy. So there's that. there's actually quite a bit more to it. But I think I've covered a decent amount, I guess.